Hey guys, what's going on? Seth here. So, a few months ago, I heard about this website called Mashvisor. Just a little bit ago, I had a chance to sort of give it a test run and get in there and explore it and figure out what it can do and how and why it might be helpful to some of you out there. So, I wanted to just quick give you a tour of the website as it currently works today. But this will just sort of give you an idea for what it does and how it may or may not be helpful to you, depending on what kind of a real estate investor you are. So when you first log into the site, the membership plan I'm working with here is the professional plan, which is approximately $50 a month. And this site can do a number of different things. The real purpose and the value behind this website is it helps landlords and real estate investors to very quickly identify some of the best glowing opportunities in whatever market they're looking in. It is hooked up to a lot of different data sources, and it brings in all of the publicly listed properties on the MLS, and it uses some fairly sophisticated algorithms. I can't pretend to understand what's going on behind the scenes, but essentially what it can do is it can find comparable properties, and it can find fairly accurate numbers for what each property can generate in monthly rent, what the expenses are, what the numbers look like for comparable properties in the same neighborhood. And it does this for every publicly listed property, and it automatically runs these numbers and shows you what the approximate cash-on-cash return can be and the cap rate for each property in two different scenarios. Scenario one is if you use that property as a traditional rental. So like if you just rent it out to a tenant and they sign a 12-month lease with you, that kind of thing. And it can also show you what those numbers would look like if you use the property as a short-term rental on a website like Airbnb. So I'm just going to quick show you an example of how it works here in the Chicago market. So as you can see, this is like the initial search page that you'll land on when you log into your account. And there's a few different things you can do. First of all, you're going to see this map with all the properties that are listed. And Chicago is a huge market, obviously, and you can see there's tons of properties to choose from. And what you can do is you can say, I want to see only the properties that have a cash-on-cash return of, say, 10% or higher, or a cap rate of whatever percent or higher. And you can identify what your budget is, like how much money you have available to spend. You can also tell the system whether you're planning to buy the property cash or whether you're planning to do a mortgage. And if you're going to do a mortgage, what the loan type is going to be. And then this interest rate, I believe, is pulled in from Zillow based on the area where you are working. You can also specify the amount you have to put down as a down payment. And if the data is available, you can even specify which neighborhoods you're interested in. And I don't think this information is in every market, but if you're working in some of the bigger notable cities, you should find a lot of this information there. And there's even more filters beyond this, but I'm not really going to get into that. But all this to say, you can get fairly specific about what your situation is and what kind of things you're looking for. And then once you've specified that and you're actually looking in the markets that you're most interested in, what I think is really cool is you can go over here and sort all these properties based on what you're most interested in. So for example, if you want to see the properties that have the best cash-on-cash return as a traditional rental, you can go ahead and click on this and it will sort them starting from the best to the worst, while also keeping in mind which filtering criteria you set up here. And as you can see right here, this one that shows up here at top, this is telling us that there's a cash-on-cash return of 29.75%. And then it doesn't tell us anything about what it would be for an Airbnb. And I'm not sure why. I've noticed that some markets are missing data like this. Maybe it's because there's not enough data available to give you that determination. I'm not entirely sure. But 29.75%, that's amazing, especially where things are really hot and it's hard to find good cash flowing deals on the market right now. So that's all great and fine, but how exactly did they come up with these numbers? Like what leads them to believe it's going to be that, and how reliable is that? Well, it's really easy to figure that out. All you have to do is click on the property and it will bring up a new window. And what it has here is like a pretty detailed rental property calculator. And you can start by saying whether this is going to be a cash deal or a mortgage deal. And automatically it's assuming that you're going to be buying this property at its full asking price. But if you wanted to change that, you could put in a custom price here and it would automatically change all the numbers over there. So keep in mind that's an option too. You can also change what the down payment would be and what type of loan it would be. But anyway, let's just go back to the cash scenario and see what this would look like. So right here, we've got all these assumptions, and this is telling us what the system thinks you're going to be able to make in rental income from this particular property, and also what the monthly expenses are going to be and what the cash flow would be, what the occupancy rate is. And then it shows you all these expenses down here. This column over here on the left, it's called one-time startup costs. This is basically like the cost that you're probably going to have to pay at closing or shortly after closing, but not recurring on an ongoing basis. So for example, when you do your inspection, if there's anything you have to repair right off the bat, any new furniture or appliances and closing costs, those are things that happen once at closing, but you don't have to keep paying for them. And then over here on the right, you have the recurring expenses that you're always going to have to pay for. I'm not sure how it does this, but I actually ran a couple of my properties against this. Like, I found very similar properties in the same neighborhoods, and I was kind of surprised. The numbers were pretty accurate. Like, if I had to change the numbers at all, it was changing it by like a few dollars. It wasn't like it was way off. So I don't know if it's like pulling this in from comparable properties, or if it has like a direct line to a utility company that somehow knows what the utility expenses are going to be and insurance expenses. I think this property management expense is automatically calculated as 10% of whatever the rental income is going to be. So if you do end up manually changing this to say like 3,500 or something like that, make sure you come down here and make sure that this is still accurate. You can also put in all these other numbers. And I would say, again, in my experience, I found these numbers to be fairly accurate. But no matter where you're getting this information from, I think before you actually make an offer and proceed with closing on a deal, you should always be verifying this stuff manually. Don't just assume this is right. I think it's fairly accurate, but still, like, you should cross-check the information and be absolutely sure that it's correct with your specific situation. Say if you've got a different property manager that's going to be charging more or less, or if you're using a more expensive insurance policy or anything like that, just make sure the numbers actually jive with reality for your specific situation. And then down here, you can see the annual and monthly projections and how fast the property is going to pay off, whether you're using it as a traditional or an Airbnb. Again, for some reason, it's not available on this property. But generally, you'll find that the Airbnb numbers are much higher and much more profitable, but it also takes a lot more cost and ongoing work to maintain that kind of property. So now when we go back to these numbers, like, where exactly does this 2,944 number come from, and how accurate is that? Well, as I'm told, Mashvisor is actually currently working on an update to this where they're going to be like providing a lot more information on where these assumptions come from, just so you're not flying in the dark and just blindly trusting their system. But I will say, if you go over here to this Valuation Analysis tab, you can sort of get a better look at the comparable listings in the area, and it will show you the actual address that it thinks is a comparable listing, and then how similar it is to the property that you're looking at. And it also shows the number of beds, the number of baths, and how much those properties are charging in rent. So if you really want to dig into these numbers and figure out like how reliably accurate they are, you can do that because they actually show you where it's pulling it from. It's kind of like a website like Rentometer or Rentometer. It's just that it kind of gives you more data and more stuff that you can use to be confident that the numbers are accurate. And as you can see, it actually shows you where those properties are on the map, so you can see how close they are to the property that you're looking at. And for insights here, this thing I thought was like potentially helpful, but in its current state as I'm recording this, I think it sort of needs more work to like actually show me a lot more information. Hopefully they will continue to build this out in the future. Something else I want to show you here, if we go back to the main search page, is let's say you're looking for an Airbnb rental property. That's what you're trying to do, and you're trying to find properties in a good area where there is a low supply and a high demand and a high occupancy rate, things like that. Mashvisor has this heat map where you can click on this, and let's say we want to search this map based on the Airbnb occupancy rate. We can click on this, and it will actually show us a heat map where the high occupancy rates are the green areas and the low occupancy rates are the red areas, and you can sort of see everything in between. And based on this, I can kind of draw some pretty safe conclusions that If I buy a unit in this area of the city, which is all green, there is a fair chance I'm not going to have a difficult time keeping that thing occupied. Whereas if I were to do it in this red area, that would be much more difficult because for reasons that I don't entirely understand because I don't live in Chicago, but for probably several reasons, there's not a lot of people who are looking to rent Airbnbs in these areas, either because there aren't any available or because it's just not a very desirable place to stay while you're in town for a little while. But however, these green areas are. And you can also go ahead and click on this tab if you want to see a live feed from Airbnb, which shows all of the properties that are currently available to reserve on that website. So you can just kind of get an idea for what your competition would be if you were to do that in this area. You can also do the same thing with traditional rentals, so you can see what other properties are on the market out there. It's just a really helpful system that pulls in some information and organizes it fairly well if you're somebody who is looking specifically for these kind of opportunities. I'll show you some other examples here. Let's say we're looking for a traditional rental property with a high cash-on-cash return. Which areas have those? Let's see what the heat map says. So if that's what we're looking for, we can see this area over here that's green. If we click on this is 3 neighborhoods with 58 properties. And it just automatically zooms in, has 23 properties. So let's click on that. And now we can see this area and start exploring each one of these one by one and find the properties with the best cash-on-cash return. And as you can see, some of these aren't really that hot. Like this one's got negative 0.97% based on the assumed data inputs that the system is doing for us. This one's looking a little bit better at 4.01. Not great, but better than negative. This one's closer to 5%. This one's at about 10%, so that's pretty good. If we wanted to click on this, I could explore that a little bit more. And what I hope you're seeing from this is that this system basically just speeds up the search process a lot. And I can tell you, like, all this information that it provides, like, I think you can probably get it all on your own. Like, you don't need this system in order to find opportunities and crunch the numbers and figure out what is or isn't going to be a good deal. But I can tell you, I've done all that stuff for every rental I've ever purchased to date, and it takes a ton of time, like an obscene amount of time, evaluating properties that you're never going to buy. You're just trying to find the good deals from the bad deals. And this system basically just speeds up that process. You can kind of weed out the junk properties that you're never going to buy anyway and identify very quickly the ones that are worth taking a closer look at. And remember, like, the numbers it's using here are the actual listing prices of the properties. You can still make an offer below the listing price, which is only going to improve the numbers. And also remember, it's important that before you get too far along, you are going through these and manually verifying all the numbers and making sure they're correct and accurate before you move forward. But the value is this really very quickly identifies the low-hanging fruit of the best properties that you're probably going to want to take a look at. And then you can sort of just ignore the ones that are a long shot and never going to be worth it in the first place. I think one of the weaknesses of this system in its current state is that it really just helps you focus on the properties that are publicly listed on the MLS. If you find a property that's off the market, like, it's not really going to be in this system, and it's a little bit harder to run the numbers and make it all work seamlessly with all the other data they have there. So it's not really intended for people who are doing direct mail campaigns and working with off-market deals. This is really geared towards investors who are looking at the publicly listed properties and using all of that data to find the stuff that's already out there. But if that sounds like you, and if that's something you're looking for, I think this could be totally helpful. And from what I've found, similar to a lot of other real estate data services out there, the data tends to be really, really rich in the densely populated areas. So if you're looking at a market like, San Francisco or Chicago or New York or San Diego or something like that, you're probably going to have a wealth of information to work with in terms of deciding and figuring out what the cap rates are and prices are and all that. However, like, if I'm looking in a market that's much more sparsely populated, like, for example, a smaller town like Traverse City, Michigan, which is not a big city at all, then you could find that a lot of the data is sort of not there that you need to work with. So keep that in mind. That can happen. You'll still see some data there. It's not like you're going to have nothing, but it won't have all of the crucial details you need to make this system work the way it was designed to work. But anyway, I just wanted to show this to you guys. I thought it could be super helpful if you're an investor who's looking for those opportunities and you're trying to save yourself a ton of time. I think this can be very effective at helping you do that. That sounds like you. Definitely check it out. I'm going to have a link to Mashvisor beneath this video. That is an affiliate link. I do get a small commission if you sign up for that. And actually, you might be interested to know, if you do go through my affiliate link, which is again retipster.com/Mashvisor, and or if you use the promo code RETIP25, you'll get a 25% discount on your first quarterly payment or your first annual payment if you decide to pay on the quarterly or annual basis. So if you want a nice discount on your first payment, go ahead and use that link and you'll be able to get that too. One way or another, I hope that was helpful to you. If you're in the market for a new rental property, or if you're trying to find new markets that have great opportunities, definitely check this out. I think it could be helpful to you. So thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.